The Parsha teaches us in Parshas Noach that Noach was 500 years old before he had his first child. Probably pretty rough. How many bris milas and simchos did he go to see his cousins and his friends? Because back then the average age of having children was like 90 years old or 100. Imagine if Noach 400 years earlier started having children. Wow, he'd have so many children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. It'd be unbelievable. Such a like Zaidi Noach. But it didn't happen. Why didn't it happen? So Rashi explains that Hashem was caught in a little bit of a catch-22. Why is that? Because imagine, let's say, he had bad kids or bad grandkids. So they would be over the age of 100, which was the age that you were then a candidate to be punished. Under 100, you were insulated from the mabul. You didn't die. But over 100, you would. So what would happen? So then Hashem would have to see Moshe, or Noach would have to see his progeny wiped out in the mabul. Let's say, on the other hand, his children were righteous. Well, if they were righteous, so then, of course, they'd be saved by the mabul. And so imagine how many tevos he would have to build, right? He'd have to build 5, 10, 50, to be a fleet of boats for Noach, for his whole family. So Hashem said, let's just wait. He suspended his fertility, and at 500, that's when he started having children. So the rabbis asked, well, what's the big deal? Let him have children, and you build a bunch of tevas. The kids could build, read a set of blueprints, they could outsource it. And the answer is that we don't appreciate what that went into the teva. 120 years, there's Noach chopping down trees, building this very special teva that was going to protect his family as a boat of salvation, to withstand the fiercest floods that the world has ever seen. And every nail that he hammered in, every tree that he cut down to build up for the lumber, his blood, sweat, and tears went into this teva. It could only be one because it had to be built by the hands of Noach. Often we'll see families that have special books about Tehillim, a Chumash, even like a Kiddush cup, something very special because they either built something, they cried, they had simchas, the pages had certain, sentimental value. They were worn in. It was passed on generation to generation. Certain things that we put our blood, sweat, and tears into. So that's ours. There can only be one. You can't have many. So imagine this is what Noach did with his teva. Imagine if you take something that's inanimate and put that same energy into something that's animate, like our children, our families, our community, what we can accomplish. It's interesting. This is not the only parsha we talk about construction. There's another lesson about construction at the end of Shmos. We talk about building the Mishkan. The Mishkan, of course, we know was the place, the home that dwelled, where Hashem dwelled in his Shekhinah. And we know this week's parsha, there's 153 verses, which is the same gematria, the same numerical value as the word Betzalel. Betzalel, of course, built the Mishkan. So we have Noach building the Teva. We have Betzalel building the Mishkan. What's the connection? Well, today, our generation, our families, we live in a mabul, a spiritual flood of crazy values, of messages, what our children are exposed to today. And we have to, of course, build our own teva to insulate our families, insulate ourselves. But in that teva, there has to be an element of mishkan, of spirituality, of a connection to Torah, a connection to Hashem, to holiness. Because every teva, in order to survive, it has to be imbued with good values, good Jewish values. Well, those values come from Mishkan, being connected to the right homes, the right people. And so as we try to do that and protect ourselves in this crazy world of floods, we have to keep in mind that to grow as people and to protect our families and to be B'nai Aliyah, to continue to grow, we need to be connected to Mishkan. Noach, Betzalel, Teva, Mishkan, 120 years. We need to build our own Teva. Nobody else can do it for us. You can't outsource it. Our bracha for the next 120 years, Ad Me'av Esrim, we should continue to be inspired with the same koach that Noach did and Betzalel did, to be builders and not just to be tourists on a boat. A good Shabbos.